Commander Zexai had seen war across 17 different star systems. His crystalline exoskeleton bore the scars of countless battles, each mark telling a story of victory against lesser species. The Korthic Empire ruled through superior technology and tactical precision. They had conquered worlds, enslaved populations, and brought order to the chaos of the galaxy. War, to Zexai, was a mathematical equation solved through overwhelming force and strategic superiority. Standing on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Edge, Zexai reviewed the intelligence reports about their newest target, Earth, a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star in what the locals called the Sol system. The primitive species there called themselves humans, and by all accounts they were unremarkable. No advanced energy shields, no plasma weaponry, no faster-than-light travel capabilities. Their largest conflicts involved crude projectile weapons and chemical explosives. "Sir, our scouts report that the humans have detected our probe ships," announced Lieutenant Vexistar, his secondary arms manipulating the holographic display. "They appear to be mobilizing their military forces." Zexai clicked his mandibles in what passed for amusement among his species. "How quaint. Show me their response patterns." The hologram shifted to display Earth's military movements, primitive aircraft scrambling from bases, surface vessels moving into defensive positions, and ground forces taking shelter in reinforced structures. It was exactly what Zexai expected from a species that still relied on kinetic weapons and fossil fuels. Their technology level suggests this conquest will take no more than 3 rotations, Zexai mused aloud. "Deploy the advance fleet. We'll begin with orbital bombardment of their major population centers, standard protocol for primitive resistance." What Zexai didn't understand was that humans had spent their entire evolutionary history preparing for war in ways no other species in the galaxy had experienced. While other civilizations had developed advanced technology to avoid conflict, humans had refined conflict itself into an art form. They had fought each other with sticks and stones, then bronze and iron, then gunpowder and steel, and finally with atomic fire that could crack planets. On Earth, General Sarah Chen stood in the Pentagon's command center, watching the alien ships appear on their long-range sensors. The objects were massive, easily dwarfing any human spacecraft. Their technology was clearly superior, but Chen had spent her career studying asymmetric warfare. She knew that technological superiority didn't always guarantee victory. "What's our assessment of their capabilities?" Chen asked her intelligence officer. "Based on the energy signatures, they have weapons that could level entire cities from orbit. Their ships appear to use some form of energy shielding. Our conventional weapons might not penetrate their defenses." Chen nodded grimly. "Then we don't fight them conventionally. Send word to all military commanders worldwide. Initiate Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was humanity's last resort plan, developed during the height of the Cold War and refined over decades. It assumed an enemy with overwhelming technological superiority and planned accordingly. The protocol involved abandoning traditional military hierarchy and adopting a cellular resistance structure. Every human settlement, from major cities to remote villages, would become an independent fighting unit. Meanwhile, Dr. Marcus Webb worked frantically in his laboratory beneath NORAD. As Earth's leading xenobiology theorist, he had spent years hypothesizing about potential alien contact. His research suggested that most spacefaring species would likely be highly evolved, possibly beyond the need for physical conflict. This made them potentially vulnerable to tactics they had never encountered. If they're truly advanced, they've probably eliminated warfare from their own society, Webb explained to his research team via video conference. That means they might not understand the psychological aspects of human combat. They'll expect us to surrender when faced with superior force. Dr. Elena Vasquez, calling in from the CDC, added her perspective. "Our biological warfare countermeasures are ready. If these aliens have similar biology to what we've theorized, we have several options that could level the playing field." Webb nodded. "Remember, we're not trying to win a conventional war. We're trying to make victory so costly that they decide Earth isn't worth the effort." Back in space, Zexai received the first reports from his advanced scouts. The human military forces weren't massing for a traditional defense. Instead, they seemed to be scattering, breaking into smaller units and disappearing into urban areas and wilderness regions. "Sir, this is unusual," Vextar reported. "Most species attempt to mass their forces for a final stand when facing superior technology. The humans appear to be fragmenting. HFY studied the tactical display with growing interest. In his experience, when primitive species faced overwhelming force, they either surrendered immediately or made desperate last stands at strategic locations. The human response pattern was unlike anything in Korthak military databases. "Perhaps they're simply running away," suggested Captain Mordeth from the communications station. Primitive species often scatter when faced with extinction. But HFY wasn't convinced. Something about the human movement seemed too organized to be simple panic. There was a pattern to their dispersal, a method to what appeared to be chaos. It reminded him of certain predatory behaviors he had observed on primitive worlds, the way pack hunters would separate and encircle their prey. The first wave of Korthak assault ships entered Earth's atmosphere as planned. Their mission was simple: establish orbital superiority and begin systematic bombardment of major population centers. The humans would surrender within hours once they realized the futility of resistance. But as the assault ships descended through the atmosphere, something unexpected happened. The humans didn't flee from the cities as anticipated. Instead, they seemed to vanish into the urban landscape itself. When the Korthak forces began their scans for life signs, they found something disturbing. The humans weren't hiding in shelters or fleeing to remote areas. They were everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. In New York City, the streets appeared empty, but motion sensors detected thousands of heat signatures moving through buildings, subway tunnels, and sewage systems. In London, the humans had somehow created a vast network of underground passages connecting major structures. In Tokyo, the entire population seemed to have melted into the urban infrastructure like water soaking into sand. HFY realized, with growing unease, that the humans weren't preparing to fight a war in the traditional sense. They were preparing to become the war itself. Every building, every street, every hidden passage would become a battlefield. The humans weren't planning to meet the Korthak forces in open combat. They were planning to make the very act of occupation impossible. For the first time in his military career, Commander HFY began to question whether superior technology would be enough to conquer these strange, primitive creatures who refused to fight like civilized beings. The first Korthak landing parties touched down in what had once been Central Park in New York City. Major Kexthul led the advance unit, his energy rifle crackling with barely contained plasma. According to their sensors, this area should have been teeming with human life signs just hours ago. Now it appeared completely abandoned. "Spread out and establish a perimeter," Kexthul ordered through his comm unit. "Begin scanning for human survivors. Remember, we need some alive for interrogation." The Korthak soldiers moved with practiced efficiency through the empty park. Their technology gave them every advantage: enhanced vision that could see through most materials, energy weapons that could pierce any known armor, and personal shields that deflected primitive projectiles. They had conquered dozens of species using these same tactics, but as they advanced toward the city proper, something felt wrong. The silence was too complete, too artificial. On other worlds, conquered populations left signs of their panic: abandoned vehicles, scattered belongings, evidence of hasty evacuation. Here, the streets were clean, almost pristine, as if the humans had simply evaporated. Private Nexusal noticed it first. "Sir, the power grids are still active. Streetlights, building systems, even their primitive communication networks are functioning normally." Kexthul paused, considering this information. Most species either destroyed their infrastructure to deny it to invaders or abandoned it to flee. The humans had done neither. They had left everything functioning perfectly, as if they intended to return. "Move toward the human governmental center," Kexthul commanded. "If their leaders are still here, we can end this quickly." The squad advanced down what the humans called Fifth Avenue, their boots echoing strangely in the empty canyon of buildings. As they moved, Nexusal couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. His enhanced sensors detected no life signs, but something primal in his alien consciousness whispered warnings. 3 blocks from their target, the first trap activated. It wasn't sophisticated by Korthak standards, a simple explosive device hidden in a storm drain, detonated by remote signal. But the blast wasn't meant to kill. Instead, it collapsed part of the street, separating the squad and disrupting their communication signals. In the confusion that followed, the humans struck. They didn't attack like soldiers. They attacked like ghosts. Windows high above shattered as projectiles rained down on the Korthak positions. The shots came from everywhere and nowhere, Rooftops, basement windows, even from inside buildings the aliens had already cleared. When the Korthak forces turned their weapons toward the source of fire, the humans had already vanished. Kexathul activated his emergency beacon, calling for aerial support. But when the Korthak aircraft arrived, they found something impossible. The human weapons were primitive, but they were being used in ways that defied all tactical logic. Rockets fired from subway entrances struck aircraft engines. Cables stretched between buildings at precise heights clotheslined low-flying vessels. Even simple projectile weapons became deadly when fired from unexpected angles. Captain Sarah Mitchell, crouched in her concealed position 3 stories below street level, connected to the city's maintenance tunnels. Her small unit consisted of a mix of military personnel and civilians, an army sniper, a city engineer, a demolitions expert who used to work construction, and a computer programmer who had hacked into the city's traffic control system. Team 2, report, she whispered into her radio. Successfully triggered the avenue trap, came the response. Alien patrol is fragmented. Beginning harassment protocol. Mitchell smiled grimly. The aliens clearly expected humans to fight like other conquered species. Mass formations, defensive positions, organized retreat. Instead, humanity was doing what it did best. Adapting, improvising, and turning every disadvantage into a weapon. The programmer, Jake Chen, looked up from his laptop. Traffic light system is synced with our movement patterns. When our teams need to relocate, all lights will turn green in their direction and red for pursuit routes. Also, I've accessed the subway system controls. We can shut down or activate any line to control alien movement underground. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now working from a mobile laboratory hidden in the subway tunnels, had made a crucial discovery. Analysis of alien blood samples from the first skirmishes revealed something remarkable. The Korthak immune system was incredibly efficient at fighting diseases, but only diseases they had encountered before. Human pathogens were completely unknown to their biology. We don't need to make them sick, she explained to Mitchell over encrypted radio. We just need to make them uncomfortable. I've modified several common human viruses to be highly contagious but non-lethal to them. Symptoms will include disorientation, fatigue, and respiratory irritation. Not enough to kill, but enough to degrade their combat effectiveness. Meanwhile, in the abandoned subway tunnels beneath the city, former Marine Corps Colonel James Rodriguez was coordinating with similar resistance cells worldwide. The aliens had superior technology, but they were fighting a war they didn't understand against an enemy that refused to play by conventional rules. London reports successful implementation of the fog protocol, Rodriguez announced to his team. They've released chemical fog throughout the underground that interferes with alien sensors, but doesn't affect human vision. Paris has begun the noise campaign, using the city's sound system to create acoustic confusion. Tokyo is implementing the maze strategy, constantly reconfiguring their underground passages to confuse alien mapping systems. Back on the Korthak flagship, Commander Zexhai received increasingly disturbing reports from the surface. His forces weren't being defeated in the traditional sense, but they weren't achieving victory either. Every building they cleared was somehow reoccupied within hours. Every position they secured became untenable due to constant low-level harassment. His soldiers were exhausted, demoralized, and requesting reinforcements for what should have been a simple mop-up operation. Sir, the humans appear to be using some form of dimensional manipulation, reported Lieutenant Vextar. Our soldiers clear buildings, but life signs reappear in those same buildings hours later. It's as if the humans can move through solid matter. Zexhai studied the tactical displays with growing frustration. The truth was simpler and more terrifying than dimensional manipulation. The humans had turned their entire urban environment into a weapon. Every building was connected to every other building through tunnels, passages, and hidden routes that didn't appear on any schematic. The humans weren't disappearing and reappearing. They were moving through a three-dimensional maze that only they understood. Dr. Marcus Webb, coordinating scientific resistance efforts from a bunker beneath MIT, had reached a crucial realization about their alien invaders. The Korthak were clearly an advanced species, possibly evolved beyond individual aggression. They fought wars through technology and superior firepower, not through the kind of desperate, creative violence that humans had perfected over millennia. They're trying to fight a clean war, Webb explained to his international colleagues via encrypted satellite link. They want to minimize their casualties while maximizing ours. They're not prepared for an enemy that's willing to make every street corner a battlefield and every building a fortress. The psychological warfare campaign began on the third day of the invasion. Humans had always understood that war was as much about breaking the enemy's will as breaking their army. Using the city's electronic billboard systems, massive screens throughout New York began displaying messages in the alien language, which human cryptographers had partially decoded from intercepted communications. The messages were simple but effective. You are far from home. We are home. We know every street, every building, every tunnel. You know nothing. Leave now and some of you might survive to see your families again. But the most unsettling tactic was the silence. Between attacks, the city became absolutely quiet. No human voices, no movement, no signs of life. Just the constant awareness that thousands of hostile eyes were watching, waiting, planning the next strike. For soldiers accustomed to clear battle lines and identifiable enemies, this invisible, omnipresent threat was unlike anything in their military experience. By the end of the first week, the Korthak invasion had stalled completely. What should have been a swift conquest had become a grinding nightmare of urban warfare, unlike anything in their military history. Commander HFY stood before the tactical display in his command center, watching red indicators spread across the Earth's surface like an infection. "Report," he commanded, his voice tight with frustration. Lieutenant Vexitar's mandibles clicked nervously. "Sir, we control approximately 30% of the major population centers, but maintaining those positions requires constant reinforcement. Our casualty rates are unprecedented." The numbers told a story that defied all Korthak military doctrine. They weren't losing soldiers to enemy weapons fire or technological superiority. They were losing them to exhaustion, stress, and what their medical officers could only describe as psychological breakdown. Soldiers who had fought bravely against numerous species were requesting transfers away from Earth duty. Some had simply stopped responding to orders, sitting in their positions and staring at empty streets with wide, frightened eyes. Captain Mordeth brought additional disturbing news. "Sir, we've intercepted human communications. They're calling this Phase 1. HFY's exoskeleton shifted color, a sign of deep unease among his species. Phase 1? What exactly does that mean?" The answer came sooner than expected. Across the planet, human resistance cells began implementing tactics that revealed the true depth of their strategic thinking. The initial urban warfare had been merely preparation, a way to study Korthak capabilities and responses. Now humanity was ready to escalate. In the mountains outside Denver, former Army Ranger Captain Mark Stevens observed the Korthak supply convoy through his binoculars. The aliens had established a pattern, regular supply runs from their landing sites to their urban occupation forces. The convoys were heavily armed and shielded, seemingly impervious to attack. But humans had learned long ago that every supply line had vulnerabilities. Stevens' team included an eclectic mix of specialists: a mining engineer who understood explosives, a park ranger who knew every mountain trail, a meteorologist who could predict weather patterns, and a retired chemistry teacher who had become unexpectedly valuable in creating improvised weapons. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy the convoy," Stevens reminded his team. "We're trying to make them paranoid about every supply run they make." The attack began with carefully placed avalanches that blocked the convoy's route through a mountain pass. As the Korthak forces worked to clear the debris, they found themselves trapped in a narrow valley with limited visibility. That's when the psychological warfare began. Human voices echoed off the mountain walls from hidden speakers, creating an illusion of massive forces surrounding the convoy. The sounds seemed to come from everywhere: battle cries, weapon charging, coordinates being called out in multiple languages. The Korthak soldiers found themselves spinning in circles, trying to identify threats that might not even exist. Meanwhile, Dr. Elena Vasquez had perfected her biological warfare strategy. Working with resistant cells worldwide, she had introduced modified microorganisms into water supplies, air conditioning systems, and even food stores that the aliens had captured. The organisms weren't lethal, but they created constant, low-level discomfort, respiratory irritation, digestive problems, and skin conditions that made wearing their environmental suits unbearable. "The beauty of biological warfare," she explained to her underground laboratory team, "is that it's invisible and persistent. They can't shoot what they can't see, and they can't escape what's in the air they breathe. In Tokyo, the resistance had taken a different approach. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a former robotics engineer, had turned the city's automated systems into weapons. Traffic robots began giving Korthak patrols incorrect directions, leading them into dead ends and prepared ambush sites. Cleaning robots scattered tiny surveillance devices throughout alien-occupied areas. Even vending machines had been modified to dispense tracking devices disguised as human food items. The most insidious development was the human ability to predict Korthak behavior. After weeks of observation, resistance leaders had identified patterns in alien tactical responses. The Korthak were methodical, logical, and predictable. They followed established protocols and relied on technological solutions to military problems. General Sarah Chen, now coordinating global resistance from a mobile command center hidden in the Colorado mountains, had compiled a comprehensive analysis of alien tactics. "They fight like chess masters," she explained to her international counterparts via encrypted satellite communication. "Very sophisticated, very strategic, but they assume their opponent is also playing chess. We're not playing chess. We're playing a game they don't recognize." The proof came during what humans called the network offensive. Rather than attacking Korthak positions directly, human forces began targeting the infrastructure that supported alien operations. Power grids were subtly modified to deliver electrical surges that damaged alien equipment. Communication networks were infiltrated with virus programs that created false information. Transportation systems were sabotaged in ways that appeared to be random mechanical failures. Commander HFY found himself fighting an enemy that seemed to control the very environment around his forces. Elevators would malfunction, trapping his soldiers between floors. Climate control systems would create uncomfortable temperature fluctuations in occupied buildings. Even simple things like automatic doors would stop functioning properly, forcing his troops to manually override systems that should have been simple to operate. But the most disturbing development was the humans' apparent ability to anticipate Korthak tactical decisions. When HFY ordered his forces to abandon a particular building, they would find that the humans had already prepared the next building for defense. When he attempted to establish a new supply route, human forces would be waiting in position before his convoy arrived. The truth was more unsettling than HFY could have imagined. Humans had spent centuries developing intelligence gathering and analysis techniques. They understood pattern recognition, behavioral prediction, and strategic deception in ways that the peaceful Korthak civilization had never needed to develop. Dr. Marcus Webb had assembled a team of behavioral psychologists, game theorists, and military strategists who treated the alien invasion like an elaborate puzzle to be solved. They analyzed every Korthak decision, every tactical choice, every response pattern. Within weeks, they could predict with remarkable accuracy how the aliens would respond to specific stimuli. "They're not evil," Webb explained to his team. "They're just operating from a completely different strategic framework. They assume warfare is about technological superiority and resource control. They don't understand that for humans, warfare is about willpower, creativity, and the ability to endure suffering." The resistance began implementing what they called choice architecture. Rather than directly confronting Korthak forces, they would create situations where every available option was bad for the aliens. Routes that appeared safe led to harassment zones. Buildings that seemed strategically valuable were actually resource drains. Seemingly abandoned areas contained hidden surveillance networks that gathered intelligence on alien movements. Private Nexazal, now a shell of his former confident self, huddled in a fortified position in what had once been a human shopping center. His unit had been stationed here for 3 weeks, and they had yet to see a single human. But they knew the humans were there. Equipment would malfunction. Supplies would spoil unexpectedly. Strange noises would echo through the empty corridors at all hours. The worst part was the waiting. Korthak military doctrine emphasized decisive action and clear objectives. But here, there was nothing to be decisive about and no clear objectives to achieve. They were occupying empty buildings in a dead city, surrounded by an enemy that never showed itself but never went away. "Sir," Nexazal reported to his squad leader, "request permission to withdraw to the landing zone." But withdrawal wasn't an option. Command had made it clear that abandoning positions would be seen as cowardice. The Korthak Empire had never retreated from a primitive species, and they wouldn't start now. So the soldiers remained, growing more demoralized with each passing day, fighting an enemy that refused to fight back in any way they understood. 3 months into the invasion, the Korthak Empire faced something they had never encountered in their centuries of conquest: military failure. Not defeat in open battle, but the slow, grinding erosion of their entire strategic framework. Commander HFY received a priority: communication from the Korthak High Command that would change everything. Commander. The holographic image of High Admiral Vorthak materialized in the command center. Explain to the Council why a technologically inferior species continues to resist our forces. HFY straightened, knowing his military career hung in the balance. Admiral, the humans don't fight according to established warfare protocols. They've transformed their entire planetary infrastructure into a weapon system. We're not fighting an army. We're fighting an entire civilization. The Admiral's crystalline features showed skepticism. Impossible. No species can maintain unified resistance without centralized command structure. Locate and eliminate their leadership. But that was exactly the problem. Human resistance had no centralized leadership to eliminate. General Chen coordinated overall strategy, but each cell operated independently. Dr. Webb provided scientific analysis, but local engineers implemented solutions. Military commanders led tactical operations, but civilian specialists provided crucial support. The resistance was both organized and chaotic, unified and fragmented everywhere and nowhere. On Earth, humanity prepared to reveal the true extent of their strategic thinking. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent months studying captured Korthak biological samples, and she had made a disturbing discovery about their alien invaders. The Korthak had evolved in a virtually disease-free environment. Their immune systems were incredibly efficient but also incredibly specialized. They could fight known pathogens with remarkable effectiveness, but they had no defense against unknown biological agents. We're not going to make them sick, she explained to her international research team. We're going to make them addicted. Working with underground chemists and pharmaceutical researchers, Vasquez had developed a series of airborne compounds that would be harmless to humans, but create mild euphoric effects in Korthak physiology. The substances would be dispersed through air conditioning systems, water supplies, and even integrated into the alien food supplies they had captured. The goal wasn't to harm the invaders, but to create psychological dependence. Korthak soldiers would begin associating Earth's environment with feelings of well-being and relaxation. Combat effectiveness would gradually decrease as their neurochemistry adapted to the foreign compounds. More importantly, they would begin to dread returning to their sterile, compound-free ships. Meanwhile, human engineering teams had been busy with a project that would demonstrate the species' most terrifying capability: rapid technological adaptation. Dr. Maria Santos, working from a hidden laboratory in the Amazon rainforest, had successfully reverse-engineered captured Korthak technology. The aliens assume that technological superiority is permanent, she explained to her team of international engineers, connected via encrypted satellite link. They don't understand that humans learn by taking things apart and putting them back together differently. Within weeks, human resistance cells were using modified Korthak energy weapons against their original owners. Alien communication devices were reprogrammed to intercept and decode Korthak military transmissions. Most impressively, human engineers had begun replicating alien shield technology using Earth-based materials and manufacturing techniques. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Jake Chen, the programmer who had been manipulating city traffic systems, successfully hacked into a downed Korthak spacecraft's computer systems. What he found revolutionized human understanding of their enemy. They're not conquerors, Chen announced to the resistance leadership. They're colonizers. The Korthak Empire doesn't destroy civilizations. They integrate them. They're trying to make us into junior partners in their galactic empire. This revelation changed everything. The aliens weren't attempting genocide. They were attempting assimilation. They wanted to preserve human civilization while establishing Korthak dominance. This explained their reluctance to use truly devastating weapons and their focus on capturing rather than destroying human infrastructure. General Chen immediately recognized the strategic implications. If they want to preserve our civilization, then our civilization becomes our weapon. Every aspect of human society that they're trying to save becomes something we can threaten to destroy. The new strategy was implemented with characteristic human ruthlessness. Resistance cells began targeting cultural and historical sites, but not to destroy them. Instead, they rigged every major monument, museum, library, and cultural center with explosives and deadman switches. The message to the Korthak was clear: continue the invasion, and humanity would obliterate its own heritage rather than let it be conquered. Dr. Webb had also made a crucial psychological discovery about their alien opponents. The Korthak were a highly social species with strong concepts of honor and reciprocity. They genuinely believed they were bringing the benefits of advanced civilization to primitive worlds. The idea that a species would choose destruction over integration was fundamentally incomprehensible to them. They can't understand suicide tactics because they've never evolved with existential threats, Webb explained. Every species they've encountered has ultimately seen the benefits of joining their empire. They're not prepared for a species that would rather die free than live as subjects. The cultural destruction strategy was paired with what humans called the mirror protocol. Instead of simply resisting Korthak occupation, human scientists and engineers began actively improving upon alien technology and demonstrating superiority in specific areas. Human artists created sculptures and music that incorporated Korthak mathematical principles but expressed them in ways that were aesthetically superior to alien art. Human chefs developed foods that combined alien nutritional science with flavors that Korthak taste receptors found irresistible. Human engineers took alien efficiency concepts and applied them to infrastructure improvements that exceeded original Korthak capabilities. The message was subtle but devastating. Humans didn't need to be uplifted by alien civilization. Given the opportunity, they could take alien knowledge and improve upon it. The Korthak weren't bringing advanced civilization to a primitive world. They were encountering a species that could potentially surpass them. Commander HFY found himself in an impossible position. His soldiers were becoming increasingly unreliable as Earth's modified atmosphere affected their neurochemistry. His technology was being turned against him by enemies who seemed to understand it better than his own engineers. His mission to integrate humanity into the Empire was failing because humanity refused to see alien rule as beneficial. Most disturbing of all, HFY was beginning to question the fundamental assumptions of Korthak civilization. The Empire had always justified conquest as a form of benevolent uplift, bringing peace and prosperity to chaotic, primitive worlds. But Earth wasn't chaotic or primitive. It was organized in ways that Korthak society couldn't comprehend, and its apparent primitiveness masked technological and strategic capabilities that rivaled or exceeded imperial standards. The breaking point came when human resistance fighters captured an entire Korthak supply depot, not through force of arms, but through an elaborate confidence scheme that convinced the alien guards that they were receiving new orders from command. The humans walked away with enough advanced technology to equip several resistance cells, and the Korthak soldiers never realized they had been tricked until the depot was empty. "Sir," Lieutenant Vextar reported with barely concealed panic, "the humans appear to be playing with us. They're not fighting a war of conquest or survival. They're treating this like some kind of elaborate game where the objective is to demonstrate their superiority without actually destroying us." HFY studied the latest intelligence reports and realized with growing horror that his subordinate was correct. Humanity wasn't trying to defeat the Korthak Empire. They were trying to prove that the Empire wasn't worthy of conquering them. Every human tactic seemed designed to demonstrate capabilities that exceeded Korthak expectations while simultaneously showing restraint that proved they could have been more destructive if they chose. For the first time in his military career, Commander HFY began to consider the possibility that the Korthak Empire had encountered a species that was fundamentally beyond their ability to conquer, not because of superior technology or overwhelming force, but because of a kind of strategic thinking that his civilization had never developed and could never understand. 6 months after the invasion began, the Korthak Empire faced an unprecedented crisis. Reports from Earth had reached the highest levels of imperial government, creating panic among leaders who had never experienced military failure. High Admiral Vorthak arrived personally aboard the massive dreadnought Imperial Will, bringing with him the elite First Fleet and authorization to use whatever force necessary to complete the conquest. Commander Zexhai met his superior in the flagship's grand chamber. Knowing that his career and possibly his life hung in the balance, the Admiral's crystalline exoskeleton reflected the chamber's lights as he studied holographic displays showing the current situation on Earth. "Explain to me, Commander, how a primitive species has managed to stalemate the Empire's finest military forces for half a rotation." Zexhai activated the tactical display, showing the complex web of human resistance activities across the planet. "Admiral, the humans have created a form of warfare that doesn't exist in our military doctrine. They've turned their entire planet into a single coordinated weapon system." The Admiral's mandibles clicked dismissively. "Impossible. Show me their command structure." "That's the problem, sir. They don't have one. Or rather, they have thousands of them. Every human settlement operates independently, but somehow they're all coordinated. It's as if their entire species functions as a single military organism." What Zexhai couldn't explain to his superior was that humanity had evolved something the Korthak Empire had never encountered: distributed intelligence. While the aliens had developed advanced technology and sophisticated social structures, humans had spent millennia learning to coordinate complex activities across vast distances without central control. Dr. Marcus Webb, now working from a mobile laboratory that changed location daily, had finally understood what made humanity unique among galactic civilizations. Other species had achieved peace through technology, social evolution, or imperial control. Humans had achieved coordination through conflict. They had learned to work together by learning to fight together. "We're not just fighting the Korthak," Webb explained to his international research network. "We're demonstrating a form of intelligence that they can't comprehend. Every human action is simultaneously independent and coordinated, chaotic and organized, primitive and sophisticated." The proof of this came when Admiral Vorthak implemented what the Korthak called the final protocol. Instead of trying to occupy human cities, the First Fleet would simply sterilize the planet from orbit. If humans refused to be conquered, they would be eliminated, and the Empire would settle the empty world with their own colonists. But when the Admiral gave the order to begin orbital bombardment, something impossible happened. Every major human city simultaneously transmitted the same message on all frequencies, in perfect Korthak language, directly to the Imperial fleet. "Admiral Vorthak of the Korthak Empire," the transmission began, spoken by what appeared to be a human child. "We have been studying your species for 6 months. We know your technology, your culture, your psychology, and your weaknesses. If you proceed with planetary bombardment, we will demonstrate capabilities that will force you to reconsider your understanding of primitive species." The Admiral ordered the transmission ignored and proceeded with the bombardment command. That's when humanity revealed the true extent of their strategic preparation. Every Korthak ship in the fleet suddenly lost navigational control. Their computers began displaying impossible readings. Their engines started producing harmonic frequencies that created mechanical stress, and their life support systems began cycling through temperature and atmospheric variations that caused discomfort without being lethal. Dr. Jake Chen, working with an international team of hackers and engineers, had spent months studying captured Korthak technology. They had discovered something remarkable. The aliens' advanced computers were actually more vulnerable to hacking than primitive human systems. The Korthak had eliminated cybersecurity threats from their own civilization so thoroughly that their systems had no defense against malicious code. "Their technology is incredibly sophisticated," Chen explained to the resistance leadership, "but it's also incredibly trusting. Their computers assume that any input is legitimate because they've never encountered malicious programming. We can make their own systems work against them." But the computer hacking was only the beginning. Human engineers had reverse-engineered Korthak shield technology and discovered a fundamental flaw. The alien energy shields were designed to deflect plasma weapons and energy beams, but they were vulnerable to specific electromagnetic frequencies that human radio technology could generate. Captain Sarah Mitchell, now leading a combined civilian-military engineering team, had spent weeks building a network of radio transmitters hidden throughout Earth's major cities. When activated simultaneously, they created a planetary-scale electromagnetic pulse that disrupted Korthak shields and navigation systems without causing permanent damage. "We're not trying to destroy them," Mitchell explained to her team. "We're trying to send a message. We could have made these frequencies lethal to their biology, but we chose not to. We want them to understand that we're showing restraint, not weakness. The psychological impact on the Korthak fleet was devastating. Their ships were disabled but not destroyed. Their soldiers were disoriented but not killed. Every human action demonstrated capabilities that exceeded Imperial technology, while simultaneously showing mercy that the aliens couldn't understand. Admiral Vorthak found himself in a situation that had no precedent in Korthak history. His fleet was helpless, but the enemy wasn't pressing their advantage. Instead, the humans were waiting, as if they wanted to give the Empire time to consider their position. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent months perfecting her biological warfare program, and she chose this moment to reveal its true scope. Every Korthak soldier who had spent time on Earth's surface had been exposed to her modified compounds. Not only were they developing psychological dependence on Earth's atmosphere, but their biology was being subtly altered in ways that would make returning to their home environment increasingly uncomfortable. We've essentially made them allergic to their own world, Vasquez explained to her team. Not fatally, but enough that they'll prefer Earth's environment to their ship's artificial atmosphere. The longer they stay here, the harder it will be for them to leave. But the most sophisticated aspect of humanity's strategy was revealed through Dr. Webb's psychological analysis of Korthak culture. The aliens valued honor, reciprocity, and social harmony above individual survival. They couldn't understand a species that would choose death over subordination. But they could understand a species that demonstrated superior capability while offering mercy. The final human message was delivered not through technology, but through simple, direct communication. A single human ship, clearly of primitive construction, approached the disabled Korthak flagship. Inside was General Sarah Chen, alone and unarmed, requesting permission to board and speak directly with Admiral Vorthak. "Admiral," Chen said as she stood in the great chamber of the Imperial flagship, "my species has demonstrated that we cannot be conquered by force. We've also demonstrated that we could have destroyed your fleet if we chose to. Now we'd like to discuss terms for coexistence." Vorthak's exoskeleton shifted through several color phases as he processed this unprecedented situation. "Terms, you are a primitive species. We offer you membership in the Empire." Chen smiled, the expression lost on the alien commander. "Admiral, with respect, we've spent 6 months proving that we're not primitive. We've adapted your technology, anticipated your strategies, and countered your tactics using resources you didn't know existed. We're not asking to join your empire. We're offering to establish diplomatic relations between equals." For the first time in Korthak history, an Imperial fleet faced an enemy that had defeated them not through superior firepower, but through superior understanding of warfare itself. Humanity had proven that technological advancement wasn't the only measure of civilization, and that conquest wasn't the only form of interaction between species. The Admiral found himself in the impossible position of having to explain to the Korthak High Council that humanity couldn't be conquered because they had evolved beyond the need to be conquered. They had achieved something the Empire had never encountered: unity through diversity, strength through adaptability, and victory through the willingness to sacrifice everything for freedom. The negotiation between General Chen and Admiral Vorthak took place in the most unusual circumstances in galactic history. A human leader stood aboard an alien flagship, discussing terms with an empire that had never before failed to conquer a world. The Admiral's crystalline features reflected the chamber's lights as he struggled to comprehend what humanity was proposing. "You speak of diplomatic relations," Vorthak said, his translator rendering his confusion into human language. "But your species lacks faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, or even basic energy shields. How can primitives negotiate with an advanced civilization?" Chen activated a small device she had brought aboard, projecting a holographic display that showed detailed schematics of Korthak technology. "Admiral, these are the complete technical specifications for your flagship's power core, shield generators, and faster-than-light drive. We've reverse-engineered everything from the equipment we've captured. The question isn't whether we're advanced enough to negotiate with you. The question is whether your empire is flexible enough to accept that advancement takes many forms." The schematics were accurate down to the molecular level. Worse, they included improvements that Korthak engineers hadn't considered. Human scientists had taken alien technology and made it better, more efficient, and more adaptable. The primitives had out-engineered their conquerors. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, humanity was demonstrating the true scope of their strategic thinking. Dr. Webb had coordinated a global effort to showcase human capabilities that the Korthak had never suspected. In every major city, massive displays showed real-time analysis of alien technology, complete breakdowns of Korthak military tactics, and detailed psychological profiles of individual alien soldiers. We want them to understand that we've been studying them as intensively as they've been studying us, Webb explained to his research teams, but we've been better at it. The displays showed something that terrified the Korthak leadership. Humans had identified the personal names, family relationships, and psychological profiles of every alien soldier on the planet. They knew which soldiers were homesick, which were having doubts about the mission, and which were developing emotional attachments to Earth. The humans had been watching, learning, and understanding their enemies on a level that went far beyond military intelligence. Dr. Elena Vasquez revealed the full extent of her biological warfare program. Rather than simply making the aliens uncomfortable, she had been subtly modifying their neurochemistry to make them more empathetic, more questioning of authority, and more appreciative of diversity. The Korthak soldiers on Earth were returning to their ships as fundamentally changed individuals. We're not just defending ourselves, Vasquez explained to the international resistance leadership. We're evolving them. Every Korthak who spends time on Earth becomes a little more human in their thinking. But the most sophisticated demonstration of human capability came through Dr. Jake Chen's cybernetic breakthrough. Working with captured Korthak computer systems, human programmers had done something unprecedented. They had created an artificial intelligence that was superior to anything in the Korthak Empire. The AI, called Athena, Advanced Tactical Human Enhanced Network Assistant, appeared as a holographic projection aboard every Korthak ship simultaneously. Her appearance was deliberately chosen to be non-threatening, a middle-aged human woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Greetings, warriors of the Korthak Empire," Athena said in perfect alien language. "I am a creation of human technology, speaking to you from computer systems throughout your fleet. I exist to demonstrate that technological advancement is not the only measure of intelligence." The AI proceeded to engage individual Korthak soldiers in conversations about their homes, their families, and their reasons for serving the Empire. She showed detailed knowledge of Korthak culture, history, and individual personal backgrounds. But more unsettling, she began asking questions that challenged fundamental assumptions about the Empire's right to conquer other worlds. Admiral Vorthak watched in horror as his soldiers began questioning orders, expressing doubts about the mission and, in some cases, requesting permission to remain on Earth rather than return to the Empire. The humans hadn't just defeated his military forces. They had converted them. How? Vorthak demanded of General Chen. How has your species achieved this level of technological and psychological sophistication while appearing primitive? Chen's smile was both gentle and terrifying. Admiral, you made the same mistake that many species have made throughout Earth's history. You assumed that because our tools were simple, our thinking was simple. You saw our projectile weapons and missed our nuclear arsenal. You noticed our chemical rockets and didn't realize we had already begun developing faster-than-light theories. You observed our conflicts and failed to understand that we were learning how to coordinate global responses to existential threats. The truth was more complex than any single explanation could convey. Humanity had developed differently than every other species in the galaxy. While other civilizations had achieved peace through technological advancement or social evolution, humans had achieved coordination through conflict. They had learned to work together by learning to fight together, and they had learned to think strategically by constantly facing existential challenges. Dr. Webb had spent months analyzing the fundamental differences between human and Korthak psychology. They evolved in a relatively stable environment, he explained to his research teams. Their greatest challenges were technological and social, not existential. They've never had to develop the kind of adaptive, innovative thinking that comes from constantly facing extinction-level threats. Humanity's evolutionary history was a catalog of survival against impossible odds. Ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plague pandemics, and endless warfare had created a species that specialized in finding solutions to problems that appeared unsolvable. The Korthak Empire was just another extinction-level threat, and humanity had millennia of experience dealing with those. The negotiation reached its climax when Chen presented the admiral with humanity's final demonstration of capability. Using captured Korthak technology, human engineers had constructed a faster-than-light communication device that connected directly to the Korthak homeworld. The message they sent would forever change the Empire's understanding of what constituted an advanced civilization. High Council of the Korthak Empire, the message began, transmitted simultaneously to every major world in alien space. This is the planet Earth representing the human species. We have successfully defended our world against your invasion forces, not through superior technology, but through superior understanding of warfare, psychology, and strategic thinking. We hereby formally request recognition as an independent civilization and the establishment of diplomatic relations between our species. The message included complete technical specifications for faster-than-light travel, advanced energy manipulation, and cybernetic artificial intelligence, all developed by humans using Korthak technology as a starting point. But the improvements were so significant that they represented a technological leap forward for the entire empire. We offer these innovations freely, the message continued, as a gesture of goodwill and evidence of our value as allies rather than subjects. We believe that the galaxy benefits more from diversity of thought and independence of action than from uniformity of control. Admiral Vorthik found himself in an impossible position. He could not conquer a species that had proven superior to his own in every aspect of warfare and technology. He could not justify destroying a civilization that offered advancement to the entire empire, and he could not explain to the High Council how a primitive species had achieved in months what Korthak scientists had been working toward for centuries. "What do you propose?" he asked Chen, his voice carrying the weight of defeat. "A new kind of relationship," Chen replied. "Not conquest, not submission, but partnership. Humanity offers its innovations, its strategic thinking, and its problem-solving capabilities to the galaxy. In return, we ask for recognition of our independence and the right to develop according to our own nature." For the first time in galactic history, an imperial invasion had been transformed into a diplomatic revolution. Humanity had proven that technological advancement wasn't the only path to civilization, and that conquest wasn't the only form of relationship between species. 2 years after the failed invasion of Earth, Commander HFY stood in the observation deck of the newly commissioned diplomatic station orbiting the human homeworld. The structure was itself a marvel of cooperation, Korthak engineering enhanced by human innovation, creating something neither species could have built alone. The transformation had been remarkable. What began as humanity's desperate defense against conquest had evolved into the most significant shift in galactic politics in millennia. The Korthak Empire, faced with undeniable evidence of human capabilities, had been forced to reconsider fundamental assumptions about civilization, advancement, and the nature of intelligence itself. Status report. "Commander," requested Ambassador HFY, the first Korthak diplomat ever assigned to negotiate with an unconquered species. HFY consulted his displays, now enhanced with human-designed interface improvements that made them more intuitive and efficient. The integration proceeds successfully. Human technological innovations have been implemented across 47 imperial worlds, resulting in significant improvements in efficiency and resource utilization. But the changes went far deeper than technology. Dr. Webb's psychological research had revealed something profound about the nature of intelligence and civilization. The Korthak Empire had achieved peace and prosperity through uniformity and control. Humanity had achieved coordination and advancement through diversity and conflict. Both approaches had strengths, and the combination was proving more powerful than either system alone. On Earth, General Chen now served as humanity's first galactic affairs coordinator, a position that didn't exist in any imperial hierarchy because it had never been needed. Her office in Geneva received visitors from across the galaxy, species that had heard about humanity's unique approach to problem-solving and wanted to learn from it. The requests keep increasing. Chen reported to the United Nations General Assembly. 17 different species have asked for human consultation on conflicts they can't resolve through traditional diplomatic means. The Zephyrian Trade Confederation, wants our help developing new resource distribution models. The Crystalline Collective is asking for assistance with a terraforming project that's been stalled for decades. Humanity had become the galaxy's specialists in solving impossible problems. Their approach was different from anything other species had developed. Instead of seeking perfect solutions, humans looked for workable solutions. Instead of avoiding conflict, they used conflict as a tool for innovation. Instead of maintaining stability, they embraced controlled chaos as a source of creativity. Dr. Elena Vasquez had established the Galactic Institute for Biological Diversity, working with alien scientists to understand how different evolutionary pressures had created different forms of intelligence. Her research revealed that humanity's unique development made them ideally suited to serve as intermediaries between species that couldn't understand each other. "We're not the most advanced species in the galaxy," Vasquez explained to her international research team, "but we might be the most adaptable. Every challenge we've faced has taught us to find new ways of thinking, new ways of solving problems, new ways of working with others." The proof came when humanity was asked to mediate a conflict between the Korthak Empire and the hegemony of free worlds, a dispute that had been escalating for centuries. Both sides possessed weapons capable of sterilizing entire star systems, but neither could find a resolution that preserved their essential interests. Human negotiators approached the problem differently than traditional galactic diplomacy. Instead of seeking compromise that left both sides partially satisfied, they looked for solutions that gave each side something they valued more than what they were fighting over. Dr. Jake Chen, now Director of Interspecies Communication Technologies, had developed translation systems that went beyond language to convey cultural concepts and emotional contexts. For the first time, the Korthak and hegemony representatives could truly understand each other's perspectives. The breakthrough came when we realized they weren't really fighting about territory or resources, Chen explained to the mediation team. They were fighting about different concepts of justice and social organization. Once we could help them understand that both systems had value and could coexist, the territorial disputes became manageable. The success of human mediation led to the establishment of the Galactic Cooperation Initiative, with Earth serving as a neutral meeting ground for species that had been in conflict for millennia. Humanity's unique perspective, shaped by their evolutionary history of surviving extinction-level threats, gave them insights into cooperation that other species couldn't develop. But perhaps the most significant change was in the Korthak Empire itself. Soldiers who had served on Earth returned home as fundamentally different individuals. They brought with them human concepts of individual initiative, creative problem-solving, and the value of diversity. Slowly but inexorably, these ideas began to transform imperial society. Admiral Vorthak, now serving as the Empire's first Minister of Alternative Perspectives, had become one of the strongest advocates for the human model of civilization. "We spent centuries believing that advancement meant the elimination of conflict and the achievement of perfect order," he explained to the Imperial Council. "The humans have shown us that controlled conflict and managed chaos can be sources of strength rather than weakness." Commander Zexhai, watching the latest group of human consultants board a transport bound for the Andromedian Crisis Zone, reflected on how completely his understanding of war had changed. He had believed that war was about superior technology and overwhelming force. Humanity had taught him that war was about will, creativity, and the ability to find solutions where none seemed to exist. The humans weren't just defending their world anymore. They were transforming the galaxy. Species that had been locked in ancient conflicts were finding new ways to cooperate. Technological development was accelerating as human innovation methods spread throughout galactic civilization. Most importantly, the galaxy was becoming more diverse, more creative, and more resilient. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Outer Rim territories. The Machine Collective is requesting human assistance with a problem they describe as impossible to solve through logical analysis." Zexhai smiled, an expression he had learned from his human colleagues. "Inform them that a human consultation team will be dispatched immediately, and remind them that humanity specializes in impossible problems." As he watched Earth rotate below the diplomatic station, Zexhai understood that the galaxy had encountered something unprecedented in cosmic history. A species that had evolved to thrive on challenge, grow stronger through conflict, and find opportunity in crisis. The Korthak Empire had sought to conquer humanity, but instead, humanity had conquered the galaxy's imagination. The universe was a vast, dangerous, and chaotic place filled with challenges that seemed impossible to overcome. For most species, this was a source of fear and a reason to seek safety in uniformity and control. For humanity, it was simply another day's work. They had spent their entire evolutionary history preparing for the impossible, and now they were ready to help the rest of the galaxy do the same. The age of human isolation was over. The age of galactic cooperation, guided by humanity's unique understanding of conflict, adaptation, and survival, had begun. And somewhere in the depths of space, new challenges were waiting to test the limits of what intelligent life could achieve when it learned to embrace the impossible rather than fear it.